When you go back and say to your finance director, the most engaged companies are the most profitable companies, it is good business to be a good place to work. Yeah, and so, yeah, absolutely right. You've got their attention. I got sacked as a tipper driver. The other person who's ever sacked me said, come back when you've been to college. A few years later, I came back, I said, Pat, I'm a trainee solicitor, and I'll not use the language that he used, but he was rather surprised by this. And I'm sort of trustee of his family trust.
Because he liked you, not necessarily your skills.
That's correct. You spend a lot of time on that in the journey and make sure that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
So it's you are at work, but it doesn't need to be hard and serious. It can be fun and it can be exciting, and try and do the exciting, fun stuff.
Hi, welcome to our Q&A series, and in this episode we're talking to John Chesworth, Senior Partner at Harrison Drury Solicitors. And this is a brilliant, almost classic career progression story, going from joining a firm with just 12 staff to building it up to having over 200 people in the team. And the key takeaways for me in this one is that about building a brilliant team, a tight team, and the correlation and the similarities between team sports as well, I think are really fascinating. So enjoy the episode and thanks for watching. John, fantastic to have you in the studio today. Thank you for taking time out of a very busy schedule, and obviously we'll come on to the development of your career, but it feels like it's getting busier and busier. You're supposed to be sort of build it up, exit, wind down, but you're doing more than ever.
Yeah, well, I think that in terms of in the business, I've got a new management team in running the day-to-day, and to some extent I'm enjoying watching what I've helped develop and create sort of move on to the next chapter. Not quite from the sidelines, because I'm still involved in some of the strategic decisions and the direction of the firm, but the sort of nuts and bolts of the day-to-day operations, etc., are now being looked after by a very able team, and I'm able to do a bit more of things like this and get out and about and see the firm from perhaps a couple of steps back, which gives me a different objective, and I can talk to the management team about what I see from that angle. Once you're out of the driving seat, sometimes you can see what's going on with the firm with a clearer vision.
Yeah, let's take you back to kind of when you started your I suppose your legal career, your journey. What was your sort of mindset then? What did you want? And then over the years, has that changed?
So I've got an interesting route into law. So I wasn't a conviction lawyer from the age of like 13 saying I'm going to be this. When I was about 8, I wanted to be a sand lorry driver because I'd seen a tipper truck, and I actually ended up when I left sixth form college, I worked for Kiernan Construction, and I actually got to drive a tipper truck at that stage. So by the 18 and a half, I'd already achieved that ambition. And then I went on to study history and economics so no real idea that I'd ever go into the law, didn't really think about that. But about halfway through my degree, I remember being sat at the rugby club with my then captain, and he just turned around to me and said, what are you going to be when you grow up, John? And
how old were you at this stage?
I was 21 at the time. What do you mean when you grow up? And I said, well, my brother had sort of gone into HR and personnel management. I said, I might do that. He said, middle management is ruined. He said, it's finished. They're getting rid of all the middle managers, and I'll tell you who's getting rid of them. It's the lawyers. They'll never be out of a job. And I went, all right. He said, so I get yourself into law. And I was like, how can I get into law? So I had no experience, no background, but I sort of asked around whether I could get some work experience, got a bit of work experience. And to some extent, it was like, well, this job seems okay. And at the time, I was playing rugby was a serious hobby. We were all amateurs back in those days, and we needed to get a career. And I thought, well, this seems like it'll pay the bills, as it were. So I just went down that route. But as I started to study it, so after I graduated, I did a conversion course to law and then the legal practice course. I got more and more sort of interested in the subject matter. And the first, when I got my training contract at a firm which was, it's now Brabner's, it was called Banks Wilson. And I really sort of fell into the type of work that I really found I enjoyed. So it was dispute resolution. I focused on property disputes, and at the time, I'll say my 20s, It was very much had a serious hobby, which was rugby, and I had a career which I enjoyed. But I would say at that stage, it was just, I'll just go along with this career.
What happens.
As opposed to sort of saying, I'm going to move from this to this to this, and by the time I'm 35, I'll be this. It wasn't like that for me. It was very much, and I think in law, it's quite daunting when you start out, because you see these people with years and years of experience, and you're there and you don't know that much, and you've not been around the block, and it is one of these things that you build the experience and expertise and gravitas with your clients over a period of time. And so I struggled to envisage myself even being an associate, let alone a partner, as a trainee solicitor. And so that took a bit of time, but also it took good mentoring as well.
Yes.
People to actually say,
was that really important? People seeing
absolutely right, that you could be this, Okay. So that I found that really was something that was quite transformational with me. And then, well, what's that pathway, and how will I get from there to there? So that was massively important.
I guess just to I suppose, as that then shaped, I'm kind of fast forwarding a bit now,
yeah.
but I know at Harrison Drury you're very much about nurturing and giving opportunities. Was that because you experienced it firsthand? Absolutely,
yeah. I experienced it firsthand, and also saw at the firm as well that they brought through relatively quickly people into partnership, and these people were driving the firm forward at the time. And actually, person who joined the firm on the same day as me, and sort of our careers sort of like, we got promoted to associate and partner at the same time, was a guy called Nick White.
Right.
And Nick's now managing partner of Brabner's. And so, we were all given an opportunity, and we were progressed relatively quickly. And I sort of saw that when I got to Harrison Drury, what we need to do is we need to get good people, and it doesn't matter how old they are. You find good people right straight out of university or straight out of college, and start painting that picture for them about what what sort of a senior position in this firm looks like, and how they're going to build their way toward that, and start doing it from day one almost.
Is that harder to shape that? I don't want to say change to suggest they weren't of that mindset, before you joined and this journey started, but with a firm that's got such heritage, and is it, you would imagine it's harder to change because this is how we've always done it, and so please, thank you very much for your input. But
so when I joined the firm, I was the 12th person in a relatively small firm, and so things needed to change anyway. And so as we brought people in, and there wasn't much of a track record of bringing people in, developing them on, etc. So it was not really an evolution, and more of a real step change in how we're going to bring people in and develop them going forward. I had the luxury, to some extent, of the senior partner at the time, Edmund Starkey, and he basically was looking for an exit.
Yeah.
And so if I said let's do something, he just wanted to keep me happy because I was his way out, as it were.
Don't leave.
So for example, I said, Ed, we actually need a computer system, and because at the time I joined, which was 2007, so still we were relatively technologically advanced. There was one computer linked to the internet, as it were, and if you wanted to send an email, you had to book a slot to get on that computer to send an email. So when I sort of revolutionary idea, so it said everyone should have a computer that's actually linked to the internet. Should we really? But he was, he had a sort of 2-year span over which I would take over as owning the business. And so if I said, I think we should do that or this, that, it might cost some money, and he'd go, well, it'd be your debt anyway, John. So, you're taking that on. So I was given a bit of a blank canvas, really, to develop things, including the people development side, and how we hired and how we developed the people within the business.
And I guess, I think I know the answer to this, but I guess it's critical to have people supporting you on your journey who want the same things. I don't mean think the same way in terms of they'll never challenge you. But are excited about, let's push. Because how many people have you got now?
There's about 250.
So from 12 to that in 19 years.
Absolutely.
It's a heck of a change.
It's a big change, and I think one of the challenges in that change is sort of trying to identify what it is culturally about the firm that's important, and to then make sure that that runs through, because you can have a good, bad or indifferent culture in a 5-person firm as you can do in a 500-person firm. But it's harder to maintain, and it's in a larger firm because there's that many more moving parts. Yeah. So I think in terms of getting people along, when I was recruiting, so back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, I was really clear about, we are going to be a firm that's innovative. We're going to challenge the way that perhaps people perceive how lawyers deliver services. So I was, sort of quite often you'd hear that the deal was going smoothly, and then the lawyers got involved, and then the brakes were put on. Yeah. And my idea was like, we shouldn't be putting the brakes on. We don't want clients to take daft risks, but we want to make it possible. So our sort of strapline of "we make it possible" was around the sort of idea that we're not the handbrake on a transaction or an outcome a client wants to achieve. We're actually the people who facilitate it, who make it happen. We're actually a part of your team that's not going to hold things back, but take things forward. Yeah. So that mindset about sort of wanting to be proactive, dynamic, and exciting was something that I wanted people to think like that, and that would help us develop and grow.
Yeah. Now there's, I'm sure you won't mind me saying, I'm sure you'll agree that there's lots of great law firms in the region and countrywide. But I suppose a question for all sort of business owners, when you're sat there looking at the plan for what you're going to be and what your USPs might be, but you've got X number of other firms that are similar and that you respect, what's your mindset there? Is it sort of combative, like the rugby pitch you could imagine, where we're going to be there, or let's be confident in what we do and talk about that? What's your take?
So I think that in terms of the market and competition, I think if you start sort of saying let's beat them, you're looking at it the wrong way completely. I think you've absolutely got to set out and say what do we want to be. And so I think the first thing is you've got to have a vision of what you want to be. Some firms just operate from day to day, and the driver might be money, but they don't really know what they want to be. Yes. So I think that being very clear about in law, like who do you want to serve? Who are the clients you're going to serve? What's your target market? To some extent, your ethos, and I mentioned before about the make it possible attitude. Yeah. But the big thing that sort of struck me as how do we go about developing this firm that I want to develop was the minute you got good people on board, it absolutely primed the trajectory of the firm. Yeah. So we would have a period of time where, from the early parts, from sort of 2007 to probably to about 2009, we were doing a lot of the work that was 20 years overdue in modernising some of the systems of the firm. And then we had the financial crash involved in there, which actually, to some extent, helped us because the labour market in law freed up. It used to be people went into a big firm like a Cobbott's or a Halliwell's, and we'll be here for life because there's a trajectory. And all of a sudden, those firms went. People's certainty in big firms was eroded, and we were able to say, actually, it's about the destination, and we're going to challenge, and we're going to be, and we'll support you at the same time. So we got people into our firm, and I was always going to back up about we'll help you develop your career, and they were enthused by that. And not only did we get younger people in, we got sort of people who were sort of in the 50s who were getting disenchanted with the way that firms had acted. Yes. In that period, and we said, well, we're not going to do that. And so we were getting people from the younger end of the spectrum, the older end of the spectrum, all about the offer that we were putting as an employer. Yeah. So as these people joined, I could see that this was moving the firm forward far quicker than any fancy marketing campaign or sort of the business development and networking we were doing. Was getting good people in was the driver of the business forward. Yeah. So I remember 2012, I joined a sort of a network, peer-to-peer networking group, and I went to see a speaker called Marcus Child talk about employee engagement and what that actually meant, and really digging down into it, and all the things it's saying about being a great place to work, all this sort of stuff chime with me. But then he sort of said, and when you go back and say to your finance director that we want to do these things to make us a great place to work, look at these facts. And it produced a sort of raft of facts that the most engaged companies are the most profitable companies. It is good business to be a good place to work. Yeah, and so absolutely right. You've got their attention, and so it was almost like and I walked out of that meeting. I went, this is just like it's obvious when you look at it in hindsight, but actually all the things I want to do about making it a great place to work, and so we have a really happy place that I'm going to spend a lot of my waking hours in, is actually going to make us a better business at the same time. And then we sort of like almost not pivoted, but we said, right, the focus we've got to have as a business now is how do we get these 2 or 3 people who've joined us, how do we get more of them in? How do we become, so if you look at the competition, it wasn't about like we want to be better than X, Y, and Z. It's we want to be the best at recruiting in the area. And so then you start saying, well, how do we do that? And it's about being a good place, actually being a good place to work.
Yes, not just saying it. And the best people to be your ambassadors for that are the people who already work there. And so, getting them out and about, getting them sort of talking to their friends, their contacts. And we found recruitment was a lot easier because after the financial crash, people had underinvested in recruitment. A lot of people trying to hire. And we were able to hire good people, and other people were struggling at that time, and that's how we sort of started that first sort of phase of growth, and it stood us in good stead ever since. Yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated by all the story, but particularly when you were younger. And apologies for flicking around. But that's kind of how mine works. That I look because it's similar to me in that I was never going to be in telly. I was going to be in sales until I was 28, and stumbled to ITV, following my brother's footsteps, and thought, oh my gosh, finally I've found something. But do you think as kind of young people, I've got young kids as well, and we're looking at careers and things, whilst it's great to know what you want to do when you're 5, there's also a potential we miss out on something because we're so blinkered. What's the right way, in your opinion, to deal with that, to allow that, let's see what happens, but also to allow someone who's 15, 16 and wants to be driven? Because it sounds like, particularly when you're hiring, obviously legal skills are important, but it's this that's important to you.
Absolutely. And I certainly would have had, I had a different perception of what a career as a solicitor was to what it turned out to be, almost straight. I think a lot of even undergraduates in law, I know they do more work experience now, but the actual day-to-day life of somebody in the type of firm that we're in is completely different and alien to what people are studying there, or what they might perceive as well. So I think to get yourself too fixated on a career, I mean, some people are totally vocational, they are driven to do that. But for me, I if I'd have sort of followed what I wanted to do when I was 15 or 16, I wouldn't have be here now. So I think leaving
a world-class tipper driver.
I tell you what. Well, ironically, I got sacked as a tipper driver. The other person who's ever sacked me was a guy called Patrick Kiernan. He God rest his soul, passed away recently. But he sacked me and he said, "Come back when you've been to college and we'll have a chat then, John, because you're not a good lorry driver. You might be a good student in whatever you study." A few years later, I came back. I said, "Pat, I'm a trainee solicitor," and I'll not use the language that he used, but he was rather surprised by this. And I took a partner in to see him, and we got his work. And then years later, when I came to Harrison Drury, a couple of years later, he came and joined me, and I'm sort of trustee of his family trusts. I am. We'll be, and that sort of circular thing. So whilst being a rubbish tipper driver, eventually, that relationship that I sort of maintained going forward, went to see him, and then
because he liked you, not necessarily your skills.
That's correct. Absolutely, yeah. So coming round to the thing about, sort of what do we look for? there's a level of competence in technical ability that you've got to have, because at the end of the day we're dealing with important stuff, whether it be sort of moving someone's house or selling someone's company. It's important, it really is. So we've got to have that level of competence, but there is a level of competence, and you don't need the absolute brain boxes of the world. You really don't need them. Some of our staff are, but actually once you've got that level of competence, the things that really make a good solicitor are those interpersonal skills, and these will become more and more important as AI does a lot of the heavy lifting in law. But still, we'll need to speak to our clients, understand really what they want, and the outcomes that they're looking to achieve. We'll have to speak to fellow professionals, people in this ideal. We'll have to be persuasive and use those sort of, and I don't call them soft skills, the human skills, that they're going to be required. And also just the sort of the work ethic as well. There's people who, again, it's a job that requires a bit of persistence and resilience and that side of it. So, and a lot of that doesn't show up on a CV. No. And so what you do find is that the people who do make it forward, and a bit of entrepreneurial ability as well. I mean, we are a firm that looks for opportunities, and actually that's one of the things I would say stood me in good stead when I was taking over the reins at Harrison Drury. Was I was prepared to take some business risks. Now, I wouldn't take any silly risks with client matters, because that's client stuff. But in terms of sort of hiring people who might not be coming to you with enough work to cover their own fees, but actually this person's going to get busy, that's a bit of a business risk. But we do that. And so that sort of entrepreneurial thing, the desire to sort of build something and that sort of thing, we need that in the law firm. Otherwise, it will just stagnate.
Just be doing legal stuff and see
absolutely.
What happens. The rugby that we've already sort of talked on here, and I don't know to underestimate it, but you played fairly hard with it and were good at it, and
well, I'd said before about when I was sort of looking for a job, it was I need something to fund me whilst I'm doing my serious hobby. I need to actually get some income, because we're all amateurs in those days. We actually, in 1995, we became semi-professional at Preston Grasshoppers, and we got to National 1, which is the Tier 3 in rugby. So it's never really high. I played for Lancashire as well. So it was what I would call a serious hobby. And law, to some extent, was an enabler of that for a period of time, but a job that I liked. And it got to a stage as my rugby career was finishing, and I realised, right now, it's take this job, which I quite like, take that career a lot more seriously at that point.
How much of that, because we've interviewed quite a few people, and I've met we used to do a lot of work with the IAAF, so we met lots of sports people who went on to do businesses, and I think some sort of quite powerful, intimidating CEOs we've met have often got some sort of sport or background. How much of the sort of the mentality of the team playing, but also the grittiness. I'm not suggesting you get clients in headlocks or a scrum or something, but what do you bring that with you into the boardroom or the office?
Well, funnily enough, I literally, I when I was a trainee and a younger solicitor, I would do quite a bit of court work. So I would do what's called agency work. So where a firm wasn't sort of, let's say, Preston based, and they needed someone to go along to Preston County Court, I'd go along and do this work week in, week out. I'd have a black eye, cut this and the other. And after a while, at first we'd go in and say to the judges and apologise, sir, and after a while they realised, it's John again, he's been playing rugby, and we'd have a chat about the rugby match. So it was like a nice icebreaker with the judges over time. So I literally used to take that into work. But
you could imagine in the legal profession that could be
bit of an
look down, or they think you're a scrapper.
But if you had an excuse for it, it's and they were a rugby fan, it sometimes worked in your favour. So, but in terms of things that I took with me and absolutely take with me, rugby is an ultimate team sport. You are nothing without those, sort of other 14 players on the pitch, and nowadays on the bench. So things are a team effort, and you're as reliant on everyone in the team. So in a law firm organisation, I'm really sort of keen about, there are the qualified lawyers in the team, but they do not function without the fantastic work that's done by the accounts team, by the HR team, all this sort of stuff that enables people to go out and do the work. So in a sports scenario, let's say the rugby, the wingers score a lot of tries, and they get the glory and this and the other, but they don't get that ball, the opportunity to do that if the forwards don't scrap and get the ball for them in the first place. Footballers, don't score, centre forwards don't score goals or win matches if the centre halves don't sort of perform, and that's so we're all part of a team doing a job and a role that enables the actual outcome, which might be the scoring of the point or the win. Yeah. So that sort of idea that the firm is everyone plays an important role within that firm, and it's a team mentality. I think the other thing I always took with it is that resilience. Yeah. Definitely the resilience point that sometimes there's dark moments in business, and you've just sometimes got to get your head down and carry on, drive through them, and you will come out the other side of it. I think COVID is a good example of that. I think every single business, probably worldwide, was sort of looking down the sort of the barrel of COVID, going, where's this going to end, and what do we need to do? And in that, we just sort of got a team together in the firm. We said, look, it could be like this, it could be like this, it could be like this, but we can, the best outcome there is most likely to happen if we just sort of roll our sleeves up and do these things right and do them persistently. And we did get through it, and actually we came through it and has really kicked on since then. I mean, the firm's growth since 21 to now has been phenomenal. So again, I think that sort of resilience, persistence, which a good sports person doesn't succeed without that, and I think I've picked that up from sport, definitely.
And as you are kind of not stepping back, because you're still very much involved, but I believe now rugby has become even more, it's gone sort of full circle.
It has, yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the reason I got into rugby was a conversation in the rugby club, and then the firm that I joined was Banks Wilson, which went into Brabner's, but the senior partner at the time was the president of Preston Grasshoppers at the time. Right. So my interview, there was a bit of nepotism going on in the interview, shall we say. We talked rugby for sort of 40 minutes and then 15 minutes about law, and anyway, so I got the job, and sort of 6 months in, the senior partner saw my principal on the stairs and said, "How's Chesworth getting on? Is he doing okay?" "Yeah, he's doing fine. He's really sort of taken to it." "Oh, thank good God for that. We only hired him because he's a decent fullback, and so
tell you that afterwards.
That's may have happened 30 years ago. I think our recruitment process is a bit more robust than that these days. But and so from that, I mean, I played rugby for many years at the club, and then not long after finishing, I sort of, you recognise that these organisations only exist because a lot of people put a lot of their time into helping to run it. So I joined the committee, sort of not long after finishing playing in the first team, and I've been on that since, cracky, that must be 20 years now. And 2 years ago, I was asked to sort of take up the chairmanship of the club, which I'm coming up to the end of my second year now. And and that club is 155 years old, but it provides a lot of opportunity for people. We've now, there's 550 junior members, boys and girls, playing on a Sunday morning, and giving people the opportunity to do what I've done. I didn't go to a rugby school. I was at a state school playing football, and I, by luck, managed to turn up when I was 8 years old at a rugby club, and that's sort of been my life. And I want sort of that opportunity to get involved, to be spread out. It's not a game these days that schools are keen. well, say keen. It's hard for them to do it because of the risks around injury, etc., etc. So we've got a community foundation at Grasshoppers, which I'm trying to get rugby into places that wouldn't normally experience, into communities and schools that wouldn't normally experience it, and if people like it, finding pathways to join Preston Grasshoppers. So there's loads of sports that can offer positive life lessons, as it were. I think rugby is a good one.
Yeah.
And also, I look back at the sort of the history of the club, and if people like me don't get involved in it, it withers and dies. So I'm very passionate about keeping that going and putting it in a better place than we found it in the first instance when I joined in 1980 as an 8-year-old.
It's kind of similar to the journey with Harrison Drury.
Absolutely, and all organisations, I think the way that I view things is that you are custodians. If you're lucky enough to actually lead and be involved in the management or leadership of an organisation, then it's not about you or the team. It's about the organisation and leaving that organisation in a better place than when you found it in the first instance. So and it does emulate certainly the experience at Harrison Drury.
So it's a heck of a journey that you're still very much on.
Absolutely.
To anyone watching this, and I'm picking a few sort of avatars, I think is the phrase. You've got someone who's 21 who's about to embark on a career, but you've got someone who's at a pivotal point in business. What kind of, if you had a minute with them, what 3 things, or that elevator pitch or a chat in a lift, what 3 things would you say to yourself when you were 21 or yourself in 2007?
I think at 21, you've got a long way ahead of you. I think that working life is important. If you're going to put your best in, it has to be something that you enjoy doing. But I'd sort of say keep an open mind. I mean, the world of work's changing so dramatically and fast that skills like interpersonal skills, relationships, all that stuff are going to become more and more important. And so building a network. So without giving any careers advice, going to that career, but value your self-development, value your building of a network, and all those things will stand you in good stead, whatever sector you go into. I think business owners, what I would say is have some clarity about where you're going with the business. Absolutely fundamental. And those objectives and goals, make sure they are not particularly finite or finance related. Because whilst that might be important to you and your own plan, i.e. if we get to this turnover and that profit, I generate this, or me and 2 or 3 people generate, it's not only is it irrelevant to the sort of person who's actually generating that revenue for you, helping you get there, it's actually it actually just demonstrates selfishness. I think so. Yes, of course, you've got to put financial plans in place because you've got to be sure that you're going to generate the revenue you need to do the things in the business. So when I hear of business plans and objectives, we're going to be this big or turnover, that's I don't think that's metric. It is an odd metric. So what you should be sort of looking to aim for in your objectives should be something that is targeted around either your people or your clients and what you're going to deliver for them. So have a plan in there. Have a plan that is that speaks to your stakeholders, mainly your customers and the people within the organisation, and in particular, sort of make sure that is an enjoyable. That's a journey, and there's an objective there, but you spend a lot of time on that journey and make sure that's enjoyable. So you are at work, but it doesn't need to be hard and serious. It can be fun and it can be exciting, and try and do the exciting, fun stuff. Even in law, it can be, and because you need it for yourself as a business leader, but also your team and your staff will enjoy the ride as well. So that's not 3, that's 2, I think. But
I pressed pause on the lift halfway because I was enjoying listening to you.
Yeah.
So John, just fantastic to chat to you, and keep loving life and enjoying your journey. But
Great.
Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. Thank you.